group analysis. Now, the first thing to ask ourselves is, what is mediation? A mediator is simply a variable that explains or contributes to the relationship between the DV and the IV. So in the case of salary and satisfaction, we all work to earn salary, and conventionally, the higher salary you get, it is expected that you are more satisfied. But of course, no one eats money in its raw form. So your spending habit could have an impact on your level of satisfaction. Yeah, there are instances where you hear about people who have money, but they don't spend the money. So they look unsatisfied, presumably. So here, spending habit is a mediating factor between your salary and your satisfaction, meaning it contributes to your level of satisfaction. So here, we conceptualize spending as a mediator between salary and satisfaction. Now, when we include a mediator in a path model or in our model, the mediating variable accounts for what we call the indirect effect in the model. Trying to close this thing so that I can. Okay, I see it now. Okay. So the inclusion of a mediator accounts for the indirect effect in the model. Now, there are various ways of analyzing mediation in a structural equation model. And then the first one is what we call the Baron and Keynes method. This method was introduced in 1986, and it's the oldest mediation analysis procedure. And it says that for us to check if there's a mediating effect in our model, we first of all need to establish a relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. And I think this is intuitive, because if the independent variable and the dependent variable don't have any relationship, then we wouldn't expect anything to contribute to that relationship. So that's intuitive. So after that, the next thing to do is we pick the IV and the mediator. Is there a relationship between the independent variable and the mediator? Now, this is what we're talking about, IV and DV, IV and mediator. Then we combine the mediator, and we now look at the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable after introducing the mediator. Now, how you draw your conclusion is that it is expected that in the first instance, the relationship between the IV and the DV should be large enough. And when you introduce the mediating variable, because the mediating variable is also taking an effect on the relationship, then there should be a significant reduction in the relationship between the independent variable and dependent variable. We'll look at the practical section and we'll understand it better. Now, the disadvantage of this method is that there is no way for us to test statistically if the mediation is significant or not. And to address this problem, this man, Sobel, came up with his own method. And it is actually designed to test for the statistical significance of the reduction in the effect between the IV and the DV after the introduction of the mediator. So he's also following the same approach, basically the same approach with Baron and Kenny. But just that when he gets to this place, he introduced a procedure, the t-test procedure, to test for the p-values and the t-values. So he built on that. But the problem is his method is highly reliant on normality assumption. And then in one of the approaches, mathematical approach, he's multiplying the standard errors of the independent variable and the mediator to generate the effect, irrespective of the fact that the independent variable could be normally distributed and the dependent variable is normally distributed. Research has shown that multiplying them does not necessarily generate a normally distributed outcome. And that is also a problem with this approach. And so as time went by, we have better approaches which would evaluate. Now we have two types of mediation, which is the full mediation, and it is full whenever we introduce the mediating variable and the relationship between the independent variable and dependent variable becomes insignificant. Meaning, this one is, oh, sorry. Okay, meaning here, let me come back here. What full mediation means is that there is a relationship here, significant. Then I introduce the mediating variable. Now, after the introduction of the mediating variable, if this relationship here becomes statistically insignificant, then it means that the mediating variable is having a full effect on the dependent variable. So that's what we call full mediation. But partial mediation is in such a way that after the introduction of the mediating variable, if the relationship between the dependent variable and the independent variable still remains significant, then the mediating effect of the mediator is partial. I think that's very clear. Now, those two methods are kind of obsolete. Currently, we use these more statistical approaches. Pritchard and Hayes in 2004 came up with this concept that irrespective of the fact that there is a relationship between there's a direct relationship between the dependent and independent variable, mediation can still exist. So we don't need to satisfy the first condition for the Barron and Kenneth method and Sobel's method. No, Pritchard is telling us that we don't need to necessarily establish a direct relationship between the IV and the DV. So irrespective of the existence of such a relationship, we can still have a mediation effect. So one important contribution to the mediation analysis by Pritchard and Hayes is that they were able to overcome the normality requirement of the Sobel's test by introducing the bootstrapping approach, which is a non-parametric approach. Apart from overcoming that limitation, this procedure also offers a stronger effect power than the Sobel's approach. So they said just estimate the indirect effects and determine if it's significant. We'll do it very soon. Don't worry about it. This is just a theory. Now, this is actually a more advanced approach. If you're doing a very solid paper and or you're a PhD student, you want to apply this method. This is the recommended mediation analysis method. It was introduced by her and I think 2014. He says the approach is very similar to the first two steps in the Barron and Kenneth procedure. The first thing to do is that you assess the significance of the direct effect without including the mediator in the model. Now, when you do that, do you have a significant direct effect or not? If you do not have a significant direct effect, it then means there is no mediating effect in the model. On the other hand, if the direct effect is significant, then you can now introduce your mediating variable. Then when you perform the analysis again, is the indirect effect significant? If it is, you assess what we know as what we call the variance accounted for. If it is not, it means there is no mediation. Now here, we'll get to understand this later. I prepare a slide for all this. So we'll get to know how to calculate the VAF and how to do all this. It's a very simple procedure because the software is going to do most of it for us. So that's just the hair exhaust procedure. Now, there is also another one. This one was introduced by Zhao et al. 2010. Step 1, determine the significance of the indirect effect. This one is telling us is that, look at the indirect effect. Is this significant? If it is, it means that the indirect effect is significant. If it is not, then what do? You assess the significance of the direct effect. Now you ask yourself, is direct effect significant? If it is, it means your model only has a direct relationship, no mediation. If the direct effect is not significant, it means no direct effect and no mediating effect. But if the indirect effect is significant, you do the same thing. You assess the significance of the direct effect. If the direct effect is not significant, it means you have only indirect effect. So you have a full mediation. If the direct effect is significant, you have partial mediation. Let's stop here for now. Let's leave all these ones. When we get to when we understand to this level, we'll get all this part. Just have all this part in mind. So in a very simple term, this man is telling us that go and conduct an analysis. Look at the indirect effect. Is this significant? Yes. If it is significant, look at the direct effect. Is this significant? Yes. If it is significant, it means that you have partial mediation. But when you run the indirect effect and it is significant, and you run the direct effect and it is insignificant, it means you have a full mediation. Very clear. Now, what is the difference between mediation and moderation? You know, so most time when we are stating a hypothesis, we say this moderates the relationship between this and this. This is a mediator between this and this. The question is, what is the difference between mediation and moderation? Are they the same thing? They are not. Mediation tells us there's a relationship, or that a mediator is contributing to the relationship. But how is it contributing? That is what moderation does. Moderation describes a situation in which the relationship between two constructs, two constructs is not constant, but depends on the values of a third variable. Now, let's use this as an example. Imagine the relationship between customer satisfaction and customer loyalty. It is expected that the higher your income, the more your taste to change. So if you're somebody who used to eat at low-end restaurant when you were earning low, when your income goes up, your loyalty to that brand where you buy your the cheap restaurant is likely going to be moderated by an increment in income. Or let's say inflation, for instance. Let's say we are looking at salary and satisfaction. Now, when inflation goes up, your purchasing power will reduce. And it's probably going to affect the value of items you're able to purchase. So your loyalty to a brand, depending on the money you're having, could also be affected. So if a variable is having a positive or negative strengthening or weakening impact on the relationship between the IV and the DV, that variable is said to moderate their relationship. So we have two types of moderation analysis. We have what we call the interaction effect. I think I use inflation to explain that. Interaction effect is if the mediating variable or the moderating variable reduces or increases the relationship. Now, the next one is what we call multi-group analysis. This is very important. Multi-group analysis in structural equation modeling, we basically use this to see if different conceptualized groups, subgroups, let's say gender, or different regions differ based on the model. If we are assessing customer loyalty, are the results consistent across both genders, or is there a variation in female and male rating of the model? So that is what multi-group analysis does. So we are going to do the fun thing now, which is the practical section. I'm not taking questions now, please. We'll take questions after the practical section. So now we want to look at the Preacher and Hayes simple mediation procedure. So I'm going to switch to the Smart PLS software, and I'm going to edit my, going to edit this. I don't know, all the icons are hiding my buttons, so okay. So now, okay, we are here. Now, I want us to introduce a mediating variable here in this model. If you can see my screen, we have a competency, likability. We all have this model. I want to introduce.
Hello, Doc.
Yes.
Sorry, but we can't see
we can't
Smart
see your
PLS.
screen.
I'm sharing my screen. I don't know.
We are still stuck with the PPT. So, James, please stop writing on the screen for us.
So what's the problem? Because I'm sharing my full screen.
Yeah, probably reshare and then you pick.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes,
I can.
Okay.
You can see it now.
Okay, thank you. Now, we want to do what we call mediation analysis. And to do that, we need to introduce, this is a simple model, a direct effect model. Now, we want to introduce a mediating variable. And I'm starting from the Pritchard and Hayes approach. So the Kenya and Barron's approach and Sober's approach are kind of outdated. So I'm going to start with Pritchard's. So let's assume we have a mediating variable called customer satisfaction. And it is captured by item number 12 on the left side of your screen, this variable, CUSA, customer satisfaction. Let's say customer satisfaction mediates the relationship between all three constructs. So I'm going to pick my customer in satisfaction and drop it here. Now, this variable, I'm using it because I just want to demonstrate something. This is what we call a single item construct. A single item construct means that it is only measured with a single indicator. You're being asked, how satisfied, on a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with this product? So that's the only construct. So if I create this construct, let me rename it. Let me call it customer satisfaction. So one of the advantages of PLSM is your ability to run your analysis with a single indicator construct. But as much as possible, it is advised to have more than at least 3 indicators, unless it is absolutely necessary you use one. Try as much as possible not to use only one indicator. Now, this is a direct relationship. This is a direct relationship. This is a direct relationship. I want to introduce mediating impact. By now, we've constructed our customer satisfaction latent variable. All we have to do is to connect it. Connect the way you connected the other. So I'm drawing this. And then it means there is a path from competency to customer satisfaction, then to customer loyalty. So I have 2 relationships now. Competency has a direct effect on customer loyalty. Competency also has an indirect effect on customer loyalty through customer satisfaction. I'm going to do the same thing here. Likability, I connect. There's already an arrow leading this, so automatically you don't need to draw another arrow again. So likability to customer satisfaction, then to customer loyalty. So there is an indirect effect between likability and customer loyalty through customer satisfaction. And I'm going to do the same thing for quality. I draw this to this place. And I release. For those of us who like design, you can move it around to make it align. And please, have we all constructed this diagram?
Please, some of us who came late because the notice was not made in the Zoom meeting. So we always saw it late to join back.
So I'll give you like 2-3 minutes to catch up, okay? Should I repeat the process? Do we all get it? Should I repeat it?
Please. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Repeat it, sir.
I'm assuming you have this diagram, right? Do we all have this diagram? This page, are we on this page? Okay, thank you. If you have this, what we are doing is, from day 1 to day 2, we're looking at only direct effect, how this has exhibited direct effect on this and so on. But now we want to see mediation, because the main importance of structural equation model is the ability to test causal relationships or more complex relationships. So we want to introduce another variable, a fifth variable here. And I said, let's assume this variable number 12 here. On the left-hand side of your screen, 0 to 12, you can see CUSA. That is customer satisfaction variable. So just the same way we did to the first 4 variables, we want to move this guy to this place. Of course, when we move it, you give it the name you like. In my model, I want to call it customer satisfaction. Then I enter as usual. And earlier, I was explaining that this is an example of what we call a single item construct. And I added the disclaimer that unless it is absolutely important and theoretically validated that you should use a single construct indicator to measure your construct, please do not use it. Unless it is absolutely and theoretically important that you do so. So now I have this. I want to see if there is an indirect relationship between competency and customer loyalty through customer satisfaction. If the competency of my firm leads to customer satisfaction, would that contribute to customer loyalty? If my customers like my brand and it leads to their satisfaction, will it necessarily mean they will be loyal to my brand? If the quality of my product is appreciated and they are satisfied, would that lead to repurchase and customer retention or customer loyalty? So those are the likely questions we are looking at here. So now, how do we do that? We simply connect. You go to the connect if you like to use that approach, or you can press Alt and you just drag it. Then you join. If you stop at this, there is no mediation, because what you've just done here is a direct relationship between competency and customer satisfaction. Now, to show us that you really want to test for mediation, you need to join from here to here, telling us that we can move from competency to customer satisfaction and then to customer loyalty. So now we have 2 ways of getting to customer loyalty through competency. It's either we go directly or we go indirectly. So we want to do the same thing for this construct, likability. We draw the same line from likability to customer satisfaction. And we can see now we have 2 approaches. From likability, we can go straight to customer satisfaction, or we can go from here to customer satisfaction and then we'll go to customer loyalty. We do the same thing for the third one. We join quality to customer satisfaction and to customer loyalty. So now we have our model with both direct and indirect effect. Are we all here now? Do we all have this diagram?
Yes. See ya.
Good. So our diagram is getting a little more complicated for us. And the more complicated it is, the more it looks serious in our eyes, isn't it? Okay, so now that we are here, all we have to do is to repeat all the procedures we adopted yesterday. Now we want to focus on the Pritchard and Hayes approach. What Pritchard and Hayes says that I run my analysis, and for you to do that, you do what we call bootstrapping. Please, let's run calculate bootstrapping. Then I run. I have the result. Do you all have this output, please? Do you have this output?
Yes, yes, we have it. Got it.
Yes.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
please, can
If
you go
have
over it
this,
again?
which part do you want me to go over?
Yes.
When it's 5:30, we are going to stop wherever we end. Which one do you want me to go over?
Like you just run something because I only have the diagram.
Calculate, click on calculate,
Yes.
then go to bootstrapping.